that has gone missing between Kitale and Nairobi airspace. We're going to get the latest shortly. We're also following developments on Cuban doctors who are expected to land any moment from now. We have a reporter, Brian Obuya, on standby for us at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Also tonight, we're going to talk about the need to have, safe spaces in Kenyan schools. I'm going to get a Florence Machio from Equality Now. She has been talking a lot about safe spaces. She's going to tell us more about it shortly. Once again, this is Bottomline Africa. But first, let me take you straight to our headlines tonight. Focus now shifts to making boarding schools safe zones, even as Moi Girls principal takes early retirement while the school board is dissolved. The United Nations endorses renewal of economic sanctions against South Sudan, but General Sumbeyo thinks otherwise. Ethiopian members of parliament unanimously agree to cut short the state of emergency that was to run for 6 months. And tonight, meet a 22-year-old who has made it a priority not to let her physical challenge limit her ability to put a smile on the faces of other women. Good evening, Africa. Once again, the program begins right now. On a Twitter poll tonight, we are asking you, do you believe doing away with boarding schools will guarantee the safety of students? Do you believe doing away with boarding schools will guarantee the safety of students? We all know what happened at Moi Girls School right here in the capital, Nairobi. That is going to form the, part of our discussion tonight. And you know the drill. Our Twitter handle is at KTN News. You can as well tweet me at Yusuf Ibra. The hashtag to use, as always, is Bottomline Africa. But for now, let me begin with our top story tonight. We are following developments of the aircraft that has been reported missing within the Kenyan airspace. A statement by the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority Director General, Captain Gilbert Kibe, says the missing flight registration number FLY-SAX from Kitale to Nairobi was last seen on the radar at 14:02 local time, flying at 11,000 feet above sea level. Deputy Air Wing Commandant Evans Ochieng also says police are trying to get more information from the airline company on details about the passengers on board the aircraft. Such as rescue teams from AAID, KCAA and KWS have already been dispatched to try and locate the plane. The plane, operated by SAX Aviation, was carrying 10 persons on board, 8 passengers and 2 crew members. FLY-SAX is listed as private charter and safari airline based right in the capital, Nairobi, and operating from Jomo Kenyatta International and Wilson airports. Now, the airline prides itself in pioneering new and previously underserviced destinations such as Kitale and the Comoro Island. Of course, that's still a developing story, and the latest is that the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority now says they've paused the search for the that missing airplane for tonight, but they're going to resume that process tomorrow morning. But for now, let me cross over to the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, where we have our reporter Brian Obuya there, and he's waiting for the arrival of the Cuban doctors, the much awaited, the much anticipated, and sometimes, controversial issue, that is the Cuban doctors. Now, Brian, good evening. If you could hear me, perhaps, can you tell us if the doctors have already arrived?
Good evening, Yusuf. Good to be on Bottomline Africa. Now, the Cuban doctors have not arrived. They were to arrive here at about 10 minutes to 10. That's about 9:50, but they have since not arrived. But we've seen a lot of activities happening here, so we expect them to be arriving not so long from now, if indeed they're actually going to arrive, because that time was actually set at 10 minutes to 10. We are waiting for the first batch of the Cuban doctors to arrive in the country, and the second batch expected to be arriving arriving on Thursday. This is coming amid a lot of debate and controversy surrounding this set importation by the state, given that there are a number of doctors in the country who are jobless. The KMPDU also argues that there are a number of specialists also in the country who also are jobless. And again, the Cuban doctors are said to be taking home huge packs, and they're actually joining the government's most paid employees, taking what is said to be about 800,000 a month, and they're also going to be receiving security and transport to and from their places of work, and also receiving free air travel from the government during their annual leave. So that's a matter that has been a controversy. So we are waiting for the first batch to arrive today. But that being the headline, Yusuf, here now is the bottom line. So this case is pending in court tomorrow, whereby there's a crucial ruling to be made by the courts on where a doctor went to court to stop the government from importing these doctors, saying that this will be a precedence being set and that the government will use it in years to come to make it as a leeway to import foreigners to work in the country, claiming that there's a huge lack of opportunities in the country. But that case being set for tomorrow, and it was a consolidation when it emerged that there were other people who had gone to court and filed a case of similar nature. The government has gone ahead to import doctors tonight. So what we don't know, and which is the bottom line, is will the ruling of the court tomorrow probably have an effect on what the importation we are going to see tonight, and the other one that is going to happen on Thursday. This, even as the government says that there's a shortage in the country, and we need to cater for all the counties health-wise, even as we look forward to attain the universal healthcare provisions. And these doctors being said that they'll finish the induction by the end of next week, before they are disbursed to their different counties or workstations. So we're still waiting for their arrival. We've seen a beehive of activities here at the JKIA, but we can't exactly be sure if the Cuban doctors have arrived, or even if they are going to arrive, given that that's a matter still, but that's a matter we are following. That's why we are here, Yusuf.
Very much, Brian. Very briefly, can you perhaps tell us if you've managed to gather anything whatsoever with the missing plan?
The last time I was speaking to the authorities here, they told me that they have not been able to get any information on over this missing plane, Yusuf. But the details as they are, you've read it out there well, that they say they have also heard about a missing plane, but no official has commented about it. But what it seems is that there could be an elimination of chances of survivors or something of that sort, given that that operation at the Aberdares has since been cancelled, has since been paused, so to speak, and still 8 passengers and some 2 crew members still missing from the plane that was bound for the JKIA from Kitale.
Thank you very much, Brian, for the update. That was our reporter, Brian Obuya, coming to us all the way from the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, where we do expect the Cuban doctors to land any moment from now. Over to another developing story from right here in the capital, Nairobi. There has been a subject of global conversation on safety in boarding schools. Now, Kenya's Education Cabinet Secretary, Amina Mohammed, has dissolved the board of Moi Girls School, Nairobi, in the ongoing crackdown against rep at the school. The Parents and Teachers Association has also been dissolved in a raft of measures to improve security at the school. The school's principal, Jael Mureithi, has also opted for early retirement over the saga, and her position will be taken by her deputy, Florence Omusula, until a substantive head is appointed. Earlier, police clashed with owners of roadside kiosks in Makina area next to the school.
The TSC has accepted the request. Notwithstanding the early retirement, investigations will still continue and action will be taken thereafter.
The ministry has held consultations with the Ministry of Interior and coordination of national government to institute a 24-hour police security at the school until all reforms at the school are concluded. And in that regard, the ministry has provided 5 armed security officers, policemen, that will be guarding the school. The current board of management of Moi Girls School, Nairobi, is dissolved with immediate effect. An interim BOM comprising officials of the Ministry of Education and the Teacher Service Commission will be put in place immediately to oversee the management of the school until a substantive board is constituted.
Now, on the same note, the traders around the school have claimed that the demolitions are in bad faith and was not going to solve the insecurity in the school. And tonight we're going to talk about safety in schools. And studio I have Florence Mashio from Equality Now. Florence, good evening. Good to have you back on the show. And let me begin with this. Of course, you've seen the development there. The principal, Jael Mureithi, has been sent home. The school board has been dissolved. The School Parents and Teachers Association has also been dissolved. Is this enough?
Of course, it's not enough. And good evening. It's good to be back here. Safety for children cannot be reactionary. Yusuf, if you remember, we were here last year, and for several weeks we talked about safe spaces. And this emanated from a campaign we had done in different schools in African countries, actually 25 schools. 25 schools in 6 African countries. And what we saw is not, Moi Girls is not a shock, because what the children were saying, they were not feeling safe, not just in school, but also at home. So what has happened at Moi Girls is very regrettable. We had sounded the alarm last year. We even had a national dialogue around the same issue, but nothing was done. But if this is the lesson that we'll need to have so that then we protect our children, then so be it.
And Florence, can you perhaps talk us through about the need to train, these teachers? Because it's very shocking to, get information that, the principal allegedly told the victim to take shower and resume classes. Do you think there's need to sensitize and, train teachers on how to perhaps approach victims of, defilement?
I think the Moi Girls case has shown us the different gaps that are already there in terms of information by the teachers, because it is clear that when you're violated, you should not shower. It is also clear that when a child is violated, they should be taken to the nearest health facility so that they can get the adequate health needs that they require. So I think as Equality Now, we believe that if we had a comprehensive curriculum that will build the capacity of teachers to know how to handle sexual gender-based violence survivors, especially in schools, because in schools we are dealing with children from 5 years old up to 18. So teachers should be equipped, and this can easily happen through the Teacher Service Commission and teachers training curriculum, where it is infused. They're able to learn, the Sexual Offences Act, they know the Children's Act, they know how to handle a survivor of sexual violence, and therefore, in the end, the child gets the justice that she or he deserves.
And Florence, let's face it, this is not the first time that we're seeing this kind of development. We've seen, of course, several other defilement cases in other schools across the country where teachers have taken advantage of students, forcing them to trade, sex for grades. Why do you think this keeps on coming back over and over again?
Because we have not seen it important enough to protect our children. This has been going on, happening, teachers being transferred, maybe some retiring, and I don't believe that retiring is enough. I understand the Teacher Service Commission says, they'll do due diligence and do investigation, but somebody has to be held culpable of what happened. And because nobody gets held culpable of violating children, that is why we keep on seeing these things happening over and over again. And that's why we keep on singing the song of we need to have safe spaces. Safe spaces in schools just means that a child feels safe enough to say, this is happening to me, or this is about to happen. Whether it is happening at home or it's happening in school, we have to have safe spaces. And most importantly, now that Moi Girls' situation has shown us that it is not possible sometimes to trust teachers, we need those safe spaces manned by people who are not teachers, but people who can offer psychosocial support to the children who feel unsafe in whatever circumstance, whether it's at home, on their way to school, or even in school.
Florence, one final question. Of course, focus now shifts to making these boarding schools safe zones for students. Let's be clear about boarding schools for now. And do you think it's the reason why we're seeing these cases taking place over and over again?
I don't think so. The case in Nanyuki, it was not a boarding school. Most violations happen either at home on the way to school, on the way home, or also in school. So it's not about boarding school. It's just that have we realized that our children are important enough for us to protect? Kenya is part of a signatory and has ratified the African Charter and the rights of the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, pardon me. And one of the key critical things about the Charter is that we're supposed to put structures and mechanisms to protect our children. Now, this is an opportune time for us to do just that. Put structures in place, put safe spaces in place in schools so that children feel free to say when they're in danger of violation so that we protect them, but also that they feel they can trust adults to protect them. Right now, I don't think children feel like they can trust adults, especially if, for example, you've been raped by a teacher and you go and tell the head teacher, and the head teacher wants to protect the name of the school. Chances are this child might not get help. Or you've been violated by your father or your uncle or your cousin. This child is likely not to trust any family member and say what has happened. They might trust somebody else. So children will trust people who make them feel safe. And right now what we've seen, teachers are not making children feel safe. Hence, we need safe spaces that are not manned by teachers, but are manned by people who are professional, who can do psychosocial support, who can connect the dots and ensure that a child gets justice.
Well said, Florence. Many thanks for your input. Now, let me take our viewers over to Ethiopia, where Ethiopia's parliament has voted to lift the state of emergency, which was imposed in February. It was supposed to last for 6 months. Now, this follows a cabinet decision on Saturday to end the state of emergency there. No MP opposed the decision, but 8 abstained from the vote. The move is a further sign that the situation in Ethiopia is improving after almost 3 years of anti-government protest, which led to hundreds of deaths and saw tens of thousands imprisoned. Ethiopia's new Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has made healing ethnic and political divisions his key priority, and since he came to power in April, thousands of prisoners have already been released. Now, the top United Nations aid coordinator lent his weight on Monday to major powers stepping up sanctions on South Sudanese leaders with possible asset freezes and travel bans to bring all sides to the negotiating table to end the 5-year conflict. Now, Mark Lowcock, the UN Emergency Relief Coordinator, said sanctions should target quote-unquote military formations and the men with guns. The UN Security Council voted on Thursday to renew some sanctions on South Sudan through mid-July and to consider imposing travel bans and asset freezes on six South Sudanese leaders if the country's conflict does not stop by the end of June. Lowcock said South Sudan's natural resources and wealth were in danger as war parties are enriching themselves through South Sudan's oil and gold and antique.
There's lots of concerns about how various parties in the conflict are enriching themselves through South Sudan's oil and gold and teak and its other natural resources, and lots of concern that a lot of South Sudan's wealth is being held outside the country. There have been declarations of cessation of hostilities, but they're a fiction because the fighting continues. The economy's collapsed. Belligerents are using scorched earth tactics, murder and rape as weapons of war. They're all gross violations of international law, and 7 million people now in South Sudan need humanitarian assistance this year. That's most of the people in the country.
And still on South Sudan, the man who negotiated the 2005 Comprehensive Peace Agreement, the letter resulted in the independence of South Sudan, however, says sanctions will not resolve the dispute in the world's youngest state. My colleague Alifas Lagat caught up with the General Sumbeyo for an exclusive interview. Let's listen in.
The constitution that the South Sudanese are using today is the constitution that we drafted in Lamada, in Lamada Hotel in Nairobi. And that was the agreement that carried when was, they still carry on up to today. They may have done a few alterations here and there, but the main text is for an autonomous country within a country. It's not, and therefore it didn't address the issue, the main issue of succession. And that's why in 2013, there was this war that started in South Sudan, because nobody knows who will take over if Salva Kiir is not there today. Yeah. You can propose as many sanctions as you want, but South Sudanese, no way. They will never budge. It will not help.
So what is the best approach?
The best approach, in my view, is we go back to the drawing board. We call the parties, we start everything anew. Allow the South Sudanese to talk, because they like to talk to each other. They haven't talked to each other. People have been crafting agreements for them, and South Sudanese don't like that. So let's not force them, because it is like forcing a horse or a cow to drink water when they don't want to drink. Yes, people who are dealing with South Sudanese don't understand South Sudanese. And I can assure you that they do not understand them. Ask the South Sudanese themselves, what do they want? Yes. South Sudanese forces are not like our forces or other people's forces. They are militias. So they are not very sophisticated, trained people. They are jungle people. They may wear uniform, but that does not make anybody a soldier. It's different. So you need to discuss with them and talk with them and agree that they can be in their areas the way they were during the war before the CBA. And then from there, they can then select their political leaders to go for negotiations wherever it is. And I recommend the East African community this time to try their hand in it, because IGAD is too much fragmented, and it's better East African community.
Of course, that is